Beyond the Cenotaph of Mankind is either the 13th or the 14th full length from Runemagick, uh, a Swedish death metal band who are they're depending on your point of view, maybe they're known for their first couple of records on Century Media, which were very much kind of they were leaning into Bolt Thrower-esque death metal, but coming from a black death metal perspective of the late 90s, which certainly had some relation to dissection and that kind of thing. Uh, Really, what they're known for people who stuck around, is incorporating some unorthodox rhythmic methods into death doom beyond that point. And usually that will get compared to everything from like Electric Wizard or Stoner Doom to whatnot. But ultimately, dissonant voicing became really important to the language that they spoke, and increasingly organic, iterative, and long form compositions that are considered as a full listen became really important to the band. Now, if you're a fan of uh, stoner doom metal, experimental doom, there's a lot to like about the rhythmic growth of the band over the course of their first 10 albums, which I think pretty much there's one released every year between 1998 and 2007. And it's a lot to take in to go and start to review a Runemagick record after 13 of them, but they did take a 10-year break. So this is the third one that they've released since coming back in about 2017, 2018. And let's just get to a clip so you can get a sense of how this record sounds. So I was one of those people who followed Runemagick and all the musicians' endeavors beyond 2007 because I loved where they went with it. I thought that the 2000s were some of their best records, and basically, at some point, they started a group called Heavy Death, and that developed a more dissonant, experimental doom meter, and I would liken the guitar style that developed out of it as something like Earth's Primitive and Deadly, where those ringing dissonant chords resolve in a certain rounded fashion that it's still droning, but they carry they carry themselves on that dissonance, and it turns into a riff. So basically, that's a big component of what makes Runemagick so interesting as a return, because that first record when they came back was very heavy on that droning sound. It was very the deliberate, plodding, sort of heavy death feeling, which was obviously something they developed through countless hours of rehearsals. They released just like something like 100 hours of music, of original music that seemed to be at least partially improvised over the course of several years. So leading into this, they brought some of that in. So it kind of changed what people expected from Runemagick. So it's a long way to get there, but it feels pretty natural as we look back through their discography and see how, you get to see how that artist, Nicholas Rudolphson, generally grew as his own voice through over the years. Not to say that he didn't learn things from the Funeral Orchestra or many other projects along the way. A lot of really great bands in that list. But what's applied to Runemagick is sort of the most important project. It's the one that has the biggest voice. It's the one that has the most kind of money going into it. There's a lot of care because it is sort of their old school death metal vehicle still. Uh, Now the rhythmic notion of it all is pretty interesting because of those influences outside of doom metal and outside of death metal. But the cadence of it still does relate to early 90s death metal and 80s doom metal. So this is a death doom metal band. They do create their own unique type of semi-dissonant gloom, but all of it comes as a statement. It comes as a full suite, and all the songs relate to each other within a similar language that follow progression throughout each album. So it is for someone who has a bit of a longer attention span, someone who has the fortitude to sit there and pay attention to the whole record. And all that 2018 record needed was a little bit more kick, a little bit more speed to it. And they basically found that on the record after that. I thought it was one of their best records, and I think they've only improved since then. Into Desolate Realms was it was the full package. It was kind of the exact thing that I wanted from Runemagick. I was very satisfied with that record as a fan for a long time. And now this one comes back, and it's got a little bit more death metal in there too now. It's got a little bit more of a kick to it. If I'm describing a little bit of like a Slugathor-esque sound, we're in that sort of realm of mid to fast paced, a little bit more brutal, and generally Runemagick emphasize their own voice here with a little bit of a cleaner production value. It gives a little brighter voice to the bass, a little bit different, two separate tones for the guitar, the rhythm guitars that sort of separate themselves out in space, and a drum presence which is just world class, I would say. So it's just a great death doom metal record, but it's also a very difficult thing to. You can't just hit someone with it and say, oh, well, there's a number one hit. It's more the type of music where you're going to want to sit with it, see how you feel, meditate with it, see how you feel. This is not so much a grower of an album, but Beyond the Cenotaph of Mankind is something that appreciates with time. It appreciates with attention paid. It's my favorite type of record in that the more you give to it, the more it gives back. It's a black mirror in that sense. But it the feeling of gloom, the way it rings out, the dark feeling of this record was really profound the more I listened to it. I think I was about 10 listens into it. It stopped droning and it started speaking a little bit clearer to me, in the sense that the songs had differentiated, but the general language of the record was known at that point. It was strong, and it is some of their best work. It's certainly the best production value they've had since probably about. Oh, the last one was pretty good too. But they've worked with the same fellow for each record since they came back, and they're all improving all at once with each record. So not quite, trite imitation, and not quite fully redefining themselves with each release. This is a band that know who they are, and now they're just finding the best way to express it. Again, there's a lot of faster songs on here if you felt like the last two were too slow, but it is death doom metal. It is a certain feeling, and it's a pretty powerful one. For me, this is the best record of the month. I'll just say that. It's a pretty easy pick for me. I've been a fan of this band since a very 20 years or so. So this doesn't have to be the choice, but it is, because it is that good, and I would absolutely recommend it with a very high recommendation. Lots more to say in the review. I've reviewed the last two records by this band, and I've written quite a lot about them, so you can get a lot of that background if you go back and click on those other reviews and get into this band. It's a band you should know. So check that out, the written review, and go listen to the album.